Welcome back to the Rational Actor Podcast. Here with me is my friend Will, and I'm your host, Mike. This week, we're going to talk about what is it to be American and what is it to be American going forward. So, Will, I think recently there's like a lot more discussion about like immigration, Americanism, making America great again. But what does it actually mean to be American?
Yeah, that's like a question that like people don't answer really well. At least I think, because people would give you like the typical answers is like hot dogs, right? Like fast food, like McDonald's, right? Like what else? Like blue jeans, rock music, right? But I think that's like the wrong way to look at the question, and that's why we're seeing this social unrest in terms of culturally within America. Because how you should ask this question is, what traditions have we kept? And like, what traditions will we keep moving forward? So is blue jeans still like an American culture thing? Not really. You know what I mean? Like, you can see people don't care so much for blue jeans anymore. So moving forward, it's probably not going to be such a big deal. It's more like a fad. It's like a small blip in history. And when you look at history, you want to look at things that prevail over a long period of time, and that provides like the social glue for cohesion, or like the society, right? So if we look at back in America, like before it became America, it was British, right? And then if you plot the birthplace of America, it's Britain. And we can go, even before that. But if we look at what we took from Britain, or like what passed down from Britain, it's really just Christianity, right? Like, besides Christianity, there's not much else. You can say like, oh, the rule of law, right? And Magna Carta and stuff like that. That remains to be seen, because in a time of anarchy, law tends to break down and it gets rewritten. so I'm not sure if that will continue to persist. But moving forward, right? Like if we go back to like present time for a quick moment, it's like there's nothing that you can sort of think, hey, like it's going to be a defining cultural identity. And you can see this as like the American slogan, which is the American dream, right? Like the American dream is based on the notion of economic success. But what happens when your nation no longer faces economic success, right? Like what makes a nation, if you view it as like an national identity, is crisis. So like in moments of crisis, a lot of things get destroyed, and what things prevail, that becomes your national identity. So if I use another country as an example, like in Japan, like Bushido is very, very critical to how their society works, how their society functions,
Maybe
right?
quickly explain what Bushido means to the audience.
Bushido is like the samurai, right? Like way of the warrior. It's the warrior's code, and it's had a huge impact on how Japanese society works. And in Western or other places, you can call it religion, right? But it doesn't have to be, because in China, like there's Confucianism, but there's also like meritocracy. So like meritocracy and the like exam system has persisted till today, right? Like it doesn't matter who was running the administration. If the Mongolians, when they were conquered by the Mongolians, if it was conquered by the Manchu, right? It doesn't matter which dynasty it was, which government, the communists, the nationalists. There was always the meritocracy, or the exam, or whatever you call it, right? There might be periods where it's suspended, right? But it's always been there, and you're looking for these things, or like these things are the things that I look for that build cultural identity for your society, right? And
So we're looking for these enduring institutions and cultural.
yeah, because
Yeah.
because let's say like me and you are strangers, right? Like we need things that bind us together, and we need something to bind us together that is not just in the moment, right? Because let's say it's baseball. Well, tomorrow I don't like baseball, or like my kids don't like baseball. Does that mean you're not my neighbor? Right? Like we're gonna have to rewrite the code between us, right? Like, are we gonna rewrite our social contract? And that's sort of what Confucius did in China, what Christianity does for Western society, right? What um, all the religions try to do, right? For their society, and that's why it's been so impactful, and that's why it spreads, because like religion is like a different social contract, and that's why like you have religious wars, right? Because one religion thinks, hey, like this is the right way to behave as a society, and this is another way, right? And obviously you have peaceful religions and religions that are more aggressive in how they're like idealized. But like that's why you can see right now in the US there's a rise in the conservative values and religion, because people right now are facing economic hardship, right?
So,
And
so let's like, what are these like institutions or cultural binding things that like make Americans American? Like,
so right now, because so here's the thing: America is a very young nation, right? Like so right now, I would say the truth is there's only Christianity. There isn't
maybe the
much
belief
else.
that you can be rich.
Yes, and the belief that you can be rich, but the belief that you can be rich is being destroyed, and that's why we're seeing not only this like economic turmoil, but there's this like cultural turmoil that's going on, right? First of all, America's a very young nation, and for a large majority of its history, it relies on immigration. So it's immigrated it's not just British, right? It was never just purely British, right? You had like first you had the African Americans, which are the slaves, right? And they still have a problem sort of integrating, right? Or becoming a culturally cohesive unit, right? Because there's like past pains, and we can talk about that. There's like reasons for that, but there's like right they genocided all the natives, right? So that's one way to do it, right? And then there's like the new immigrants, like the Irish, the Italians, right? All the like Asians, right? And then now it's the Mexicans, right? So you're constantly adding new people into the into your nation, but you never have a solid nation code, right? And at the same time, I do want to add a caveat. You don't want your like national identity to be super firm, because if it's super firm and super concrete, you turn into Japan, right? And it becomes really hard for anybody to really become Japanese, right? Unless you're born there and you learn all the rules, learn all the etiquette, learn all the language, learn all these things.
Even then, you might not still be
Yeah,
accepted, right?
even then, they still might view you as an outsider, right? Whereas, like, because in America, it's so lax, or there isn't that much national identity in that sense, it's much easier to integrate. But we are asking this question now, right? Which is why you see this conflict between the woke and the non-woke. You
So
know,
wouldn't this be a feature, not a bug, of the system?
in a way, you can view it like that. I'm more like describing just what is really going on. I'm not saying it's good or bad, right? I'm not really forming an opinion, but it's just a view of, hey, like America is gonna do what all new nations do, I think, which is it's going to have to face this idea of harmony, right? And you can see this with a lot of the Eastern nations, right? There's different ways you can try to harmonize your society, and there's a reason why Rome, right? And you can Rome, didn't like Rome collapsed, right? Like why didn't Rome persist till today? Because it never established like a culture across its whole empire, right? And people like to say like, hey, well, culture has to do with race, I like or ethnicity. It has some elements, but you can always convert cultures, people culturally over generations, right? So it's not like a race thing. I don't think so, because at some point, you if you guys go through enough turmoil, right, you will be accepted. It's like the army. If you guys fought in the war together, I think if you come back and the guy who saves you if you're a white nationalist and the guy who saves your ass is a black man, I think when you come back you'll be a little less racist. You know what I mean? So it's like all this race stuff is it's just cultural stuff is being illuminated by the lack of economic prosperity. You know what I mean? It's like two issues, but because you have a lack of economic prosperity, the the cultural issue gets exasperated.
Okay. So like basically the only cultural binding thing is like you can come to America for opportunity and for chance to be rich, and that's not really happening, right? So
Yeah,
that's where we're devolving to all these culture wars and all these racial
yeah,
conflict, right?
yeah. It's like a way of saying, hey, like it's a way of disguising economic warfare. So like at the end of the day, it's always economic warfare. But if we get rid of if you settled your stuff culturally, it would just become class warfare, which is what it really is, right? And like why you don't see class warfare in the U.S. as much, right? Even though it's getting bigger now with like socialism on the rise, is because the national identity isn't there, right?
Like, but is there appetite for America to embrace socialism to
Is
address this income inequality, or is there another way to address it, like
there
through
there is no other.
other means?
That's a different. We're going off the deep end here, but econ. I sort of said earlier, there isn't really history hasn't shown us another way, like outside of revolution, right? Like so it's always a revolution. And like what do you think the guy's slogan is going to be? It's always like authoritarianism or socialism, right? Like depending on what's the flavor of the month. Like they're the same thing, right? It's ultimately like a redistribution of the pie and like a reset of the game.
So what flavor of socialism are we getting? Are we getting the UBI, Andrew Yang, tax the robots, or are we just going to tax the billionaires and redistribute the billionaires' wealth?
How I would look at that is where the rich is going, because ultimately to fight any revolution you need money. It's like if you don't have any money or power, you can't do anything, right? So you need to see where the pendulum is swinging. And for the U.S. right now, I think the elites are still happy. Things aren't that bad for the elites yet. So you would need like a really oppressed, sort of lower class if you want like this populist uprising, which things aren't that bad in the U.S. So I doubt it'll happen. You know what I mean? Like how many you're talking about armed insurrection, right? Like when you see that happen, it's usually in authoritarian countries where the living conditions are so bad people aren't getting enough food, right? In the U.S., food's not a problem.
So you don't think there'll be a peaceful transition? Like,
Peaceful transition out of this thing? No, as I'd say it's improbable because everyone's just looking for their own self interest, right? So they're just trying to advance their thing, and then once the pie becomes small enough where the only way I can advance my interest and it becomes everyone for themselves, then you'll have rich fighting the rich, and when that happens, you'll have civil war or like some form of redistribution, and it's just like which side wins, and
didn't you already see that with the last election? We saw like billionaires from both sides fighting each other.
sort of right. Like you're seeing the beginnings of it, but it's things are still too good for it to truly devolve because there's too much money in the system, right? Like people aren't going broke, people aren't starving, so you're not going to have this populist thing.
So what's the red line that needs to be crossed before we see change, or we're just gonna like wander in this system forever?
No, it's gonna get worse, right? We're gonna see like the American debt system blow up and all these things, right? Like it's just a matter of how long they can prolong it, or it could be a foreign war, right? That the U.S. Drags itself into, right? Because once your economic power is sort of exhausted, the only thing left, which is what you've been funneling all your money into, is like the excess military power. So you're gonna go try to convert that military power either through threats or coercion into economic power. right? To like juice to right, and that's how history has shown, right? All these empires go out to conquer new lands and absorb all their gold and pay for their own deficits, right? That's why Britain has like the Opium Wars, right? That's why they conquered India, right? They did stuff in North America, right? And I signal out England here because it's the predecessor for the United States, right? So like if you look at direct continuation, the U.S. is the direct continuation of the British Empire. I wouldn't
So
view
it's
it as two
extension.
separate. Yeah, it's literally the extension of the British Empire. I wouldn't view it as historically as a separate thing because like
You saw like
what
started like Genghis Khan and then the Yuan dynasty in China. So like
no, that's even more different
okay,
because look, ultimately who when people so here's a caveat. Like when people say, hey, like, yo, I'm a national identity, I'm so special or whatever. What's like if I get a new government, if I get a new institution, right? Like I go from authoritarian to democracy, or the democracy to authoritarianism. Does that make me a new nation? No. I'm still the same person, right? I still have my same cultural tastes. I still have the same preferences, right? Like education might change it a little bit, but I still might believe in my religion. So like, I'm not just because I'm in a new land or I'm a new whatever, it doesn't mean I've changed. Or like and it doesn't mean that I will change a lot, right? Like I might change a little bit. So like in that sense, Americans are not exactly British, right? They're like you can say they're like a mutation, right? Like a mutated British, right? But they're still British. They're gonna keep all the British identities, which is just like okay, like the
imperialism.
imperialism, exactly, imperialism, right? The racism, right? The elitism, right? The all the British ways of life, right? They've adapted that, right? And you can argue like Christianity, right? Christianity is the most important thing they've brought over, right? So it's not like people don't change. Like it takes generations, right, for it to die out. Like so, like why Rome died out. Like you can argue that British is like an extension of Rome, and depending on how you look at it and stuff like that, right? Is because Rome never homogenized the area, right? So like once the Rome itself fell, all the languages, the customs, everything else died with it. You know what I mean? And in a sense, the Romans were like they've adapted the Greeks,
Like
right?
wouldn't these British traditions be like phased out pretty quickly now because the country's too young, right? So
Yeah,
like the institutions are not strong enough to like convert newcomers to the country to be British, or quote unquote British, right?
yeah. So they did phase some of it out, right? So like they phased out the monarchy, right? They genocided all the natives, right? Because they couldn't convert them, right?
Hmm.
Like you right? All nations do this. I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's just like, hey, like you're not joining my society fast enough, right? You're gonna put up a fight. We'll see who wins, right? And in this case, the British won, right? So then they've united this land, right? Uh, and then they brought over the African Americans, and you can see why the African Americans are like still fighting for what do you call like reparations and all these things because they've never been fully integrated. Like because if you're fully integrated, you don't care about reparations because you're like, hey, I'm American, you're American. You know what I mean? Like it's there's this like historical wound there, right?
How do we
Because
resolve these tensions
um,
or injustices?
I wouldn't. It's just time, right? Like over time. So like first, that's one thing that you can see in Asian cultures that they do really well, which is they don't promote individuality, right? So like there's costs and benefits of this, right? But in the US they promote individuality. Well, like when you promote individuality, like that's what happens, right? Everybody starts thinking, "Hey, I'm special, I'm different. Like why should I be a part of you? Like you should pay me reparations. You should do these things for me." Right? Instead of saying like let's not fight.
Isn't that
Right?
just part of being American or like quote unquote British?
Isn't that well, you can say it like that or you can view it as America hasn't truly faced an existential crisis. So like as in a growing nation, right? Like why is it that the um Japanese. I like using Japanese as an example because they're a small nation, right? Their national identity is the strongest, one of the strongest. Their resolve is something that is unshakable. I would say, right? Like, and they've proven it in World War II, right? Like we talk about Islam extremists. Have you seen Japanese extremists? Right, like the guy who hid in the cave for like 60 years or whatever. He didn't even believe that the war was over, and he was just like still single man fighting in the Philippines, right? Like every day saluting the emperor. Like that level of dedication to his nation, right? Which you can say is like brainwashing or whatever, right? Like, we, right? But like that level is insane, right? Like, and they didn't they've gone through a lot to get there, right? And like the Bushido preaches loyalty, right, to the emperor or to the lord, right? And they've had many internal fights over internal struggles, right? Whereas in the U.S., there's only one, right, which is the Civil War, right? So they haven't had many civil wars to like really grind down all their grievances, right? So like, let's say you had like 15 civil wars in the U.S. Do you think people would be still talking about slavery? I don't think so. You know what I mean? You can view it as me and you, right? Like, if two people, like, you can view nations as people, and it's like, hey, me and you got no fight, right? And we don't resolve our differences. We're just like, yo, like, fuck you, right? Like, we're just swearing at each other, right? But let's say we had 15 fights, right? Like, we're brothers, we're forced to fight, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, we're living in the same room. It's just like, oh, yo, like, we have to be friends at the end of it. You know what I mean, right? So it's like that, and like as a nation, that's sort of what happens, right? And
Is it necessary to have these like conflicts like become civil wars, or can they be resolved like in different ways?
that's a tough question because like the other example I would bring is like Judaism or like the Jewish people, right? Like they right, like now is Judaism's a religion, right? But is it really a religion? Like, no, it's a people's, right? You're born a Jew, right? But yeah, you can convert to Judaism, but I don't know how that makes you Jewish. You know what I mean? like like right, and they're not they're not sort of, their conflict wasn't infighting. They've survived like Moses, right, with Moses, and like prosecution after prosecution, World War II, right, and now like war in the Middle East. So like they know, right, they have the grit as a nations, as a peoples, to like set their differences aside, and that's what I'm arguing here, or not arguing, but pointing out here that America as a nation is too young, right? If you look at it as a person, it's too young. It has not faced a lot of truly existential struggles. All the existential struggles, World War One, World War Two, they're overseas. Vietnam, Korea, overseas. You know what I'm saying? Like you're not fighting your own battles, right? Like it's not truly existential. It's like you going to rob someone else's house. You're like defending someone else's house, you know, right? It's like when you're truly defending your own house, you're gonna put aside your differences with your fellow brother, right? Even though you might hate each other, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, fuck it, right? So that's what you really need, and that's when you can see what stays and what disappears. So like,
So you need a existential threat at the homeland.
yes, but at the same time, you guys, like, so like Rome faced many existential threats, right? But you see, like the Roman Empire, because of the way it's governed, it didn't promote hegemony or across all its states, right? And you want to do that, right? If you want to maintain the American Empire, right? And like the Jewish people, they are a peoples. You know what I mean? They transcend states, right? It doesn't matter to them what state you're in, right? Like if you're Jewish, you're Jewish, right? So right, and with Japan, it's like, right, like you have to be Japanese, right? So, and born in Japan, right? And you know what I mean? So like there are different rules. It's not a concrete set of rules, of exactly how it works. And like for Chinese, it's there are a couple things I sort of boiled it down to. It's like um, the mandate of heaven, right? So when empires must unite, right? Like so China's always unified, and that's because the first emperor, he sort of set the tone for the rest of all the other emperors, which is just like, if you want to be emperor, you have to have the jade seal, right? And you have to grow you have to conquer, you have to subjugate all the other disputes, right? And all the new emperors, like the Mongolian or the Manchu or even the Japanese, they come in and they have to use the Chinese system to govern. Why? Because China's too large, too many people, right? Like if you use like the Japanese way or the Manchu way or the Mongolian way, like, hey, why don't we live in, have like tribal leaders and stuff? It doesn't work at that scale, right? So like until like China population maybe inevitably collapses or whatever, right? You're not going to see a major change in sort of some Chinese what's it called, Chinese identity, which is like that. And of course you can, if we want to go a bit deeper, it's like you see the communists coming in and they did a bunch of stuff, right? Like Chairman Mao destroyed a bunch of things, right? But now you're seeing the return of Confucianism, right? It's becoming another course as well, or it's being adapted into like the communist ideology, right? So like Confucianism and Mandate of Heaven is um, is here to stay, right? Like they have different regions with different foods, right? People speak their different dialects, right? There's like a bunch of minority groups, right? But like race was never really a big deal, you know. There are, well, like when there were foreign invaders, there was, okay. There are caveats to everything I'm saying, but yeah, like if you look at, you know back to the U.S., it's like, wait, like baseball's dying, right? Like who watches baseball, right? Nobody watches.
Football. Well, football
Right,
is
right.
like the
It's being
big American
replaced by
thing.
football, right?
Mhm.
But how long is that going to last, right? Because like, oh, yo, there's basketball, right? Like, what would you argue is more American? Is it basketball? It might be the basketball. It's, hey, like everyone else in the world recognizes basketball. People like they don't know football. Like people don't even
I
know
think
football.
America. I think football is probably the most American. It's the most valuable league in the world,
Yeah,
even
yeah,
though only
no,
Americans watch it.
yeah, exactly. But right? But that doesn't make it American because 100 years from now, people play a different game, right? It might not be football, right? So like there are things that change, and I'm not saying, hey, what stays and what, like, the people decide that ultimately, right? It's like music, tastes change, right? Like, oh, rock and roll is American, hey, like today it's not, and we'll go back to it, right? But like what's gonna set this nation apart from that nation, and like ultimately, if everything aligns, then you're the same nation, and it just becomes a class war, right? And like you can see, like in the past, um, we do have religious wars or cultural wars, right? So like the split between the schisms between Catholicism and Christianity, right?
I think like the biggest issue with like the American identity is like it's based on individualism and also like the idea of going to a new world with opportunity. But like a lot of these concepts can be brought back to your home countries. Like many other
Yeah,
countries can incorporate
exactly.
these
There's
because they're
nothing.
not unique, not particularly unique about us, America or this place that
Right.
requires you to have these ideas, right?
Exactly. It's like, I don't know, right? Like if you listen to All In, right? Like they ask this question, what means American? And like Jason Calcanis always likes to say, oh, entrepreneurship. There's entrepreneurship everywhere. Like what? Like entrepreneurship is what makes unique. We have the best entrepreneurs. Like wait, like that doesn't make any sense because like what happens when your country goes broke? Like does entrepreneurship keep your society together? Like let's go. No. Like right? And then there's like American ingenuity. Like okay, like what about German ingenuity? Like you stole all that stuff from the Germans. So like can Germans have, like, if you view it as a person, you can sort of say, hey, like my ego is my identity, right? Like we're getting a bit philosophical here, but it's like, hey, being rich is my identity. But it's like, okay, like are you still you when you're not rich? Like, what happens when you go broke? Right? It's like, oh, yo, like being a sports is my identity. It's like, okay, but what happens when you get injured? Like, do you cease to be? You don't, right?
Hmm.
But like, why do you make that your identity, right? Because it doesn't make any sense, right? Like, if I'm not good at this thing, does that make me un-American? You know what I mean? Like
Or if you don't
these,
like watching it.
yeah, like right, and America being the the thing, right? If my identity is being first, what happens when I'm no longer first? Do I cease to be? Does America just blow up? No, right? Like you're still American, right? So like, right? It's like you're still you when you're not first in the race. You're just second, right? But for some reason, that's like, oh no, it's like my identity. I have to be first. So it's just like, wait, like if you like go deeper into the thing, it's just like there's not much there, right? Outside of like glory for what it means to be American,
Mhm.
right? Because like, hey, you could still be Japanese or Jewish. It doesn't really matter. Like like the Jewish, like like we survived the Holocaust, yo. Like what are you gonna do? Like nothing you can do. It can like like never again. But like hey, like you, we don't need to be the first. We don't need to be the best. Like we know where we are. You know what I mean? Like you got like a fake person and like a confident person. Like if you look at like a confident person, that's Jewish. That's a Japanese. You know, right? Like and I would argue so like and why this is important is because it's important for wars. It like there's two things to fight in wars, which is like the will to fight and the ability to fight. Okay, so like America's been blessed because it's had a lot of ability. Right, it's got like ample land, ample resources, insane. Right, it's got all the resources of North America. It's protected from national oceans. So all of these things leads people to think, oh, America's the best. But really, you genocided all the natives. That's why you're the best. You know what I mean? Like you're like born with all these buffs, right? So if you look at like historical writings on General Patton, right, and like MacArthur and them from the German perspective, you'll note that as a generalship goes, they're not like that spectacular because they can do things that the Germans couldn't because the Germans don't have any that much resource. It's like I'm playing chess with you, but I got like an
With a
extra
huge
queen.
handicap.
Yeah, like I have like three queens. Well, like no shit, you're gonna win. Like, right? But that doesn't mean, right? Like your will to fight is strong, right? The American will to fight, I would argue, is untested. It's really untested because there hasn't been that many um, civil wars, and you don't really get to see because there's no external enemy, so you don't really get to see the American will to fight. You know, right? Like with the
Well,
Japanese will to fight, like as serious, right? Like if there was no atomic bomb, right? Like I don't think even the analysts say like America has a hard time beating Japan. Right? It still they still need Russian lives, right? And you can argue World War II was won by the Russians, and the Russians have a strong identity as well, you know, with Napoleon and lots of it in fighting, right? The Decemberist Revolution, like all of that, right? Like Peter the Great, Catherine the Great, all these things. So, you know,
do you? Let's double click on the Civil War
yeah.
part. Do you foresee any civil wars starting in America?
Well, like you
Future?
can. Right now,
Or
we're at
where
like
will
the
they be
really,
fought
really
over?
early. Right now, we're at the really, really early stages, which is just
Uh-huh.
like cultural breakdown, right? Like that's what we're seeing. So like people are it's like the economics of the situation, right? The wealth gap, inequality, and everything. It's taking these are all symptoms, right? Like the crux of the issue is wealth gap, right? But if you look at wealth gap things in the past, right? Like it's always been like in other countries, it's always been, hey, the rich are taking from the poor, right? So an example of this would be the French, right? The French Revolution. It's like, hey, like the nobility, like F you, right? The French Revolution, democracy, gunpowder, right? It's like F you, right? If you look at China, it's communists versus nationalists, right? And before that, it was the the what's it called?
The
The emperor.
Qings.
Yeah, the Qing dynasties, right? So it's always been like that, like any even in civil war, right? Like it was a breakdown of the economic stuff, right? But it's unique to the what's unique to the US is you have like this cultural stuff going on, right? And you only see that when there's not a strong national identity, right? Then we attribute these other things. Oh, it's because of race, it's because of or, racism, right? Well, it's like an example I'd use is like, hey, yeah, the Helots, like if you look at Greek history, like Spartans, they oppressed the Helots and Helots kept rebelling. It's like, wait, why did the Helots keep rebelling? Well, it's because Helots never had a way to become a Spartan, in a way, because they couldn't become landowners and own slaves themselves, and they couldn't rule Spartan society, like, or become integrated into Spartan society, right? So like they were perpetually kept at the bottom, and you can say that's what the African Americans are experiencing. Although it's sort of changing, right? Like they've been perpetually kept at the bottom, and they're like, wait,
But they've literally broken the greatest glass ceiling of all,
yeah,
right?
right, but wealth inequality wise, they really haven't, and you can argue like that's because of culture, right? Like I'm not flaming a black culture or whatever, right? But it's like there's this unique identity that black culture celebrates, and I would say it's not. It doesn't. Let's just say it doesn't. They don't promote doctors. They don't promote lawyers, right? Like you're either a rapper or like you're gang banging or whatever, and those are like high risk. Let's just say, right? They don't promote education. They're high risk, right? Like like you'll have one successful drug dealer, one successful rapper for every 100 failures. Whereas like, hey, if you have a engineer or whatever, it's 1 in 2, right? Or actually, probably be like 80% success, right? And you can see like cultures that sort of transcend, right? So all the most of the Asian cultures, or the Jewish, right? Like people always say, hey, oh, yo, that's just Asian, but like, hey, just the Jewish, like, what do you mean? They're all doctors, lawyers. You know what I mean? Like, hello, like they're all educated, they're all financiers, they value education. So it's just like, and you can argue like, hey, why hasn't we can do a whole episode, and it's like, why like African Americans haven't succeeded, and I have like my own takes on that, but there's the symptoms, right? So like that's why you see like go a bit away from African Americans, so you see like trans, right? There's like gay rights, right? Like women versus men, like feminism, right? These are all things of all the base layer is always like economics, but why these issues show up as these, it's like multifaceted, and instead of forming a single coalition of like the poor versus the rich, it's like this mismatch.
The rich want you guys to fight.
Yeah, they first of all, they want you to fight like that, and second of all, it's because there's no firm identity, right? Because like if you look at Japan, it's like, yo, you're either daimyo or you're shogun, right? Unless you want to be a shogun yourself, right? Or like, I mean, like you're emperor or you're shogun. You know what I mean? Like you're either emperor or you're shogun. So, and that's what happens when you have like a really cohesive thing, because it's like, hey, there's no difference between me and you, other than, yo, you got to pay me more, and that's what it should boil down to. If you have a nation or a peoples that are really strong, and ultimately our goal as human species is like we become one species.
So like beyond the culture, what's the next stage in this conflict within in
In
America?
this, right? So like first, like, well, like we assume that the economic inequality things are going to get worse, right? So nothing changes, and you can say like, hey, hey, Donald Trump, in the beginning, he said a lot of things that make it seem like he was going to do change, but you know, he's more of the same, let's just say. So what's going to happen next is America's economic wealth gap is going to continue, right? And you'll start seeing alliances form between some of these groups, right? And ultimately, some of the rich is going to lose their power, right? There's going to be power struggles between the rich and the powerful, and those disgruntled will will sort of form their faction, and you can see that within the Democrats right now. They're sort of realigning, right? Trying to figure out what can I do to get the most amount of soldiers. If you view the lower class as soldiers and like the elites as commanders, then it's like what message do I need to gather my soldiers for the fight, right? And then there's still the problem, the deficit. So if we look at it geopolitically, it's like, hey, who can we go and take money from? Well, we've tried taking it from Russia. It's not getting anywhere. We're squeezing our allies, and that's why Trump's doing all these things. Like the U.S. is going to squeeze their allies regardless. It doesn't matter if it was Trump or Biden. Like the method would be different. It might
It's just
not
the
be as
rhetoric.
yeah. It might not be as direct, right? It might not be like, oh, I'm going to tariff you, but it might be some behind the scenes deal, like, hey, we're not going to sell you weapons anymore if you don't do this, or like we'll let them raid the Strait of Hormuz. We'll like screw up the European trade. We'll like raise energy prices on you. You know how Germany is dependent on my natural gas? Like, I'll raise energy prices on you, right? Like, I'll commit financial warfare on you. Like, I'll freeze your assets, right? These are all things they can do, right? But you know, the U.S. is screwing their allies. They need to do that because it's everyone for themselves, and the U.S. is in a bit of trouble. And then, the best thing was to rob China if you could, right? But China's still strong, too strong at the moment for the U.S. to do something. But the U.S. always has a card in their back pocket, right? Which is like and we talked about this last episode, the Taiwanese independence thing, right? So it's like going forward in if we're talking about like the next year, right? Next 2 years, I think it's still going to be a fight between the. I think the Democrats still need to figure out what the hell they're going to do to like gather soldiers because they haven't gotten soldiers. And then when I say gather soldiers, it means like they need to get their priorities and come up with a message, right? Whether that's socialism or some form of new Obama, right? Like it's not going to be socialism because
So you think there's gonna be two fronts in this quote
but
unquote
there's
war?
always like a national priority, like domestic priority and a geopolitical priority, right? And you can see
Mhm.
like how Trump Trump can't, despite talking all these things, he like if you look on foreign policy, he's not done anything different than Biden. Right? Continue
Arguably, then
support.
much
Yeah.
worse, right? For the MAGA agenda.
Um, Depends how you look at it. So like he's continued supporting Israel. That's what Biden does. He's continue war in Ukraine, right? Despite saying not, he's not, right? So he's going to fight Russia, continue to fight Russia, try to do things that take Russia, right? But that hasn't changed, and he's rolled back a lot of sort of what he said was waste, right? Which is like you could say, hey, that's really bad for the U.S. to do that, but you can also argue, hey, like U.S. is in such a weakened state that and it needs to start consolidating some of its positions.
But, but,
Like
but, but can he still know why he's like giving tax breaks to like the wealthy?
yeah, well, like so domestic, so geopolitically, Trump's not very powerful, like or
Mm-hmm.
America's not very powerful, right?
Uh-huh.
Domestically, Trump can do what he wants.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Domestically, he's very powerful because the Republicans are very powerful because they've beaten the Democrats. You know what I mean? But the Democrats aren't out of the game yet. Like there's still lots of resistance, right? The poorest don't want to be oppressed. You know what I mean? That issue hasn't been solved, right? So like an example of this would be in World War II. Like if you look at Nazi Germany, pardon the analogy, like the whatever components, but it took the night-long knives and everything for not for the Nazis to first get rid of the communists and then to get rid of the brown shirts within its own company, right? So like depending on how you want to tackle this analogy, it's like the brown shirts could be the Democrats. They're not there. They're not gone yet. You know, they're not dead yet. Like the communists aren't gone yet. So like in that sense, we're still very early in World War II. Does that make sense?
Mm.
Right? Like the warring nation is still building itself up, and there's still many times for change. Right? Maybe it is a socialist thing. I doubt it. Okay, I put it at like less than 30%. That
Well, what I was trying to say is like it looks like Trump is currently based on the bill that just passed, he's doing a reverse Robin Hood, right? Stealing from the poor and giving it to the rich, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
So wouldn't that
like
cause these tensions to like escalate unnecessarily?
yes,
Why is he doing that?
it's inevitable. Like you could say it's inevitable, but like if we look at the history of the trend, is it's always going to keep going the way it's going, right? So like there are agents for change. So like for example, right? She stepped on the freaking economic bubble in China. Like he blew up the real estate himself, like China or whatever CCP blew. But hey, what did it take for him to have the ability to do that? He had to eliminate all his rivals. You see what I'm saying? He had to eliminate all his rivals, get rid of right everyone who opposed him, make sure he has power to get a third term limit, right? Because if he doesn't, maybe the guy who he replaces him just turns back and backstabs him,
They
right?
capitulate and then bail out the real estate companies, right?
Right? They might bail out the real estate companies. There's all these things, right? So you need a you need to have like such grasp on power, and how like the Americans do it is, the American system doesn't let you have that much power, right? Even though like in a way he does, but because of how badly the Republicans are capitulating, but it's because he's still serving the interests of the wealthy, right? Like
Hmm.
you think like you think when she was wanted to blow up the real estate bubble, you don't think the real estate magnates were making moves behind the scenes, funding things to get rid of them? You know what I mean? Like come on,
So
it's
this is like so that's probably why we're seeing a lot more ICE raids right now. Like Trump raiding those illegal immigrants as sort of a tribute to his lower class supporters. Like, okay, we did something for the rich, and now we're gonna do something for you, right? I'm
yeah,
guessing that's what
well,
he's trying to
it's
do.
symbolic because like it's bad for the U.S. Like let me get this straight. Like you want immigration, you want more people, in your country because you need to first of all you need to be above replacement. Okay. The second thing is you need like these illegals. You need GDP. Like how real GDP is grown is by people. So like the more people you have, the more GDP you have, right? Like a
But
person.
some people may argue like these new people are not net accretive, right? They might be like burdening on. No, like yeah.
That's oh yeah yeah yeah. But here's the thing. It's like most of them, you could argue, still add to the system because if they were sick, they wouldn't have made that journey. Like if they were super old, they probably couldn't have made that journey. Right? So like chances are the people who get in through illegal immigration are the most vital or like have the most vitality, like are in their most quote unquote productive years. Right? Like they might not, right? A portion of them goes to crime, a portion of them goes to, maybe illegal activities and sort of taking advantage of the system. But I would argue the majority of them do not, and they probably provide a net benefit, which is why there are people fighting for them, right? So like the people who want to keep them, right? They're the ones charging them rent, right? They're the breadwinners of the family, right? For whatever family that depends on them, right? So you hear a lot of these stories, right? Like former vet, right? Breadwinner getting locked up, deported, right? These you hear these edge cases, but you also hear the crime edge cases, right? So that's just the problem with immigration itself, right? And Trump's just enacting. He can do everything he wants domestically because he's consolidated his power, right? For now, but
So
because
what do you? Yeah, finish your point.
so like in Germany, because of the Nazi, they've consulted the power, or like he's consulted power, but ultimately he needs to solve the issue. You know what I mean? Like if he doesn't solve the issue, which is make Germany great again, right? I.e., going to war.
The Third Reich.
Yeah, the Third Reich would have fallen a lot faster, right? So they're like this, if they didn't have this huge stimulus into like a wartime economy, right? That would have think. So like Trump, right? But the thing with the American system is you only got 4 years, so you don't need to worry. So it's like
So
it's actually in your interest to like rob the country blind. You know what I mean?
so
Like rob
what do you think is Trump going to do now next?
next.
Like he's just continue to support the rich and
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah.
steal
So
from the
like what
poor.
you're seeing right now, like what you're seeing right now with Trump is like he's fighting with the Fed. So like that's why you see all these things, and like he's fighting with the Fed and he wants a Fed cut, right? So first of all, a couple of bombs here I'm gonna drop. It doesn't matter, like when you look at, hey, are the Feds gonna cut, or like what the Fed rate is gonna be, or whatever, right? Like people always say, hey, economic data, blah 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 blah, right? Well, let me just say this: jobs data, right? Inflation. To me, that's all fake, right? Because they can just change the data.
Or how it's like, yeah.
Yeah, they can change how it's, number one, they can change how it's measured. Number two, and you saw this with Biden, right? They fudge up the employment numbers, and then the month later they're like, oh yo, like we miscounted, right? So
I saw something like very interesting the other day. There's like a huge increase of disabled Americans, quote, quote, disabled over the last few years, and disabled people are not part of unemployment.
yeah, so like it doesn't. So like the Fed. So right now, Fed is an independent agency. So the Fed is fighting with Trump, and Trump is like, hey, I want you to cut. The Fed's like, no, I'm not going to cut. And Trump is like, you know what? I'm going to try to force you to cut because I'm going to do these tariffs. I'm going to do all these things. But the Fed's like, well, I can just fudge the numbers to like prove my point. You know what I mean? Oh, I don't need to cut. Look at our economic data. It's so strong. Right? Look at all these people on benefits. I don't need to count them as unemployed yet. Right? Like these are all little tricks, right? But you can think of it as China. Like these governments are all the same, but like obviously there's a varying degree. It's just like how how much they fudge the numbers and what they do, but governments in itself all act the same. So it's just like Trump's like, I want you cut, and the Fed doesn't want to cut, right? And it's not going to change until Powell gets removed, which is why you see Trump is like, hey, I want to remove Powell every time, right? He like strikes Iran, I want to remove Powell. New tariffs, I want to remove Powell, right? Like that's the trend. It's just like, like every time Trump does something, right? And that's why you see the taco trade. It's like, hey, when does the taco trade end? Okay, it ends when, when either Powell's removed, right? Or like this thing actually, right? Like, when the rate cut happens, that's basically when, right? Like when that's when Trump will go full ham. It's basically, Powell's keeping a leash on Trump's tariff wars because like,
So like, do you think the US dollar debasement will continue to accelerate, or is it already
well,
started?
they're saying that they want that to be the case, right?
So Trump has been saying that.
Yeah, well, like Scott Besson has been saying that, right? They want to make the dollar cheaper, but it's like, hey, well, like, how can you make because like if you print, all the other countries can print, right? Like China's pegged to the U.S., so like they can just print.
I heard a conspiracy theory saying like the US is just gonna keep printing until like to buy the gold, and then everyone can debase at the same time, and then everyone's debt can be relieved.
Yeah.
Have you heard that?
It takes so much coordination. So like, here's why I'm doubting. I would press doubt on any geopolitical sentiment. It's because nothing's changed. Like if you look at geopolitically, Trump has no power, right? Like, can he get anything done in Israel? No, right? Like he bombed Iran, right? Like he bombed Iran. He didn't get Israel to do anything. Do you get what I'm saying? So like in terms of geopolitical leverage, Trump has none, right? Like did he get Iran to give up? No. Did he get Iran to capitulate? No. Right? So like, yes, as a person, I can go out and punch somebody, but can I force you to punch somebody? Right? That's real power. That's geopolitical, right? So like when I see like right, and it's like, oh, is can Trump get the Ukraine war to stop? No. Right? Can he get Russia to give up? No. Right? Can it get Ukrainians to give up? No. Can they get the Europeans to do things? No.
So you're saying Trump is not a live player?
Geopolitically, no. Domestically, yes. Right? Domestically, he's very strong. Like I would not bet against, right? So like, for example, when Trump says, hey, I'm going to rally the market, he rallies the market. Why? Because that's an American thing. You know what I mean? So like that's the Trump trade. It's like, yo, anything domestically Trump says he's going to do, he's going to do. Like his track record there has proven it. Right? And
so basically ignore everything he does geopolitically and just focus what he does domestically.
Yeah, domestically. It's and you can see this because the domestic institutions are aligned, right? The Republicans control the House and the Senate, right? And because Trump is serving the interests of the capitalists and he's not destroying wealth, right? He's serving the people that have put those politicians in place. So in that sense, those people will not be against him, right? And people who want to fix the actual problem, aka Elon, got booted out, and everyone else who was pro Elon, who was with Elon, right, got booted out, right? There was the person in charge of NASA, right? He was quote unquote considered a tech billionaire, squeezed out. You know what I mean? So now it's like you can argue, whatever the neocons or whatever, these people are back in play, but obviously Teal's still there, right? Like Teal's the new is still like part of the crew and stuff.
Let's end on this one. Who do you think Teals go back? Are they going to continue backing MAGA or back the Elon's American Party?
No, he's gonna back manga. Like
He's going to back MAGA?
yeah, like he doesn't look. He's Elon's gonna welcome him with open arms. It doesn't matter when Teal joins. That's the beauty of Teal, right? You're not gonna turn away Teal. So, right? You can argue Teal's smarter than Elon. You know what I'm saying? Teal's the real genius.
He's really calculated. He doesn't like reveal himself. He's like
he's
the
real calculated.
puppet master.
Yeah, he doesn't, right? So like Elon is a gambler. Number one, he's a gambler. Like he goes all in like a bunch of times, and he's been lucky to succeed. Right, luck's been a huge factor. But I'm not saying he's not a great founder and things like that. But he, he's too, at least in the politics arena, he's too idealist. He's like Trotsky. You get what I'm saying? And like when you're Trotsky, you get wrecked by Stalin. and that's basically sort of what happened, right? Like, you can go out on these whims and try to fix a problem ahead of time and do all these things, right? But unless you've consolidated your position like Xi, unless you know how to work the system like Dunn, right? Or you're a new nation, you're a brand new nation post-war, like Lee, right? Or like George Washington, I guess, because he could be king. Right? Like we'd be a different United States if you wanted to be king. There's very little you can do to truly change the system. Look at Obama. Like, dude, Obama's a goat. He's the Democrat version of Trump. He came in and he got healthcare done. Guess what? Repealed. Like,
It's not repealed. It's still here.
Yeah, but you get what I mean, right? Like Medicaid's guttered, right? So that's what happens. Right, like when you do that stuff, right? Like you're too idealist. You try to crush the bubble ahead of time, that type of thing, right? You can't be bullish into a bear market. We're heading into a bear market. Yeah, you better, and likewise, right? But yeah, those are sort of my predictions and how I look at trading Trump right now.
Okay, let's leave it at that.